Abilene 911.
Hello?
Abilene 911, go ahead.
I accidentally killed somebody.
You think you killed somebody?
No, I know I did. I woke up and I was hallucinating.
You were hallucinating?
Yes, and I thought my sister was a demon and I killed her.
It was 11:42 p.m. on February 4th, 2007, when Paris Bennett dialed 911.
I want you to start CPR, okay?
No, I know for a fact that she's dead because
Do you want to go ahead and try? It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help. No, I don't think it'll help.
The dispatcher stayed on the line, repeatedly begging him to try CPR, because in her mind, there was still a chance to save the little girl, and every second mattered. But what she didn't know was that the window to save Ella had already closed. She continued giving instructions, believing she was guiding a frightened boy through a desperate attempt to keep his sister alive while officers rushed to the house. But when police finally arrived, they found Ella lying face down on the floor, untouched, positioned in a way that made one thing immediately clear. No CPR had ever been performed. Throughout the entire call, while help was on the way and a dispatcher was doing everything she could from the other end of the line, Paris had only been pretending. He never made a real attempt to save his sister's life. But what Paris didn't say was the truth behind what had really driven him to this point. What happens when a child, someone you've nurtured, someone you love, betrays you in the worst way possible? What happens when the person you trust the most becomes a monster in front of your eyes? This is the story of Paris Bennett, the 13-year-old boy who unalived his 4-year-old sister Ella, leaving behind a trail of destruction and a family shattered forever.
I went to see him that night. I was like, I don't believe you anymore. I think you killed your sister on purpose. All of a sudden, he became a completely different person. It's like he no longer had to keep up this act anymore. He looked at me and he said, "Y'all are so stupid." He laughed at me.
But before we continue, if you find this video interesting, please give it a like at the end and tell me what you think about the case. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe for more. Thank you. This video is created solely for educational and documentary purposes. It does not endorse, glorify, or condone any of the criminal actions or individuals described in this case. Viewer discretion is advised.
Do you remember what happened after the emergency services turned up at the house?
I remember that a male officer walking past me into the bedroom, and I remember hearing him mutter, "Oh my God," when he saw what I had done. And I remember, I just felt like I was drowning in shame, knowing that they saw what I had done and knew that I had done it.
But before this, Charity Bennett, the mother of Paris and Ella, was only 6 years old when her world was shattered. Her father, James Bennett, was murdered, and the person suspected of being behind his death was none other than her mother, Kyla. Despite the evidence that pointed in her direction, Kyla was acquitted of the crime, leaving Charity with a deep, unresolved trauma that would shape her entire life. For Charity, it wasn't just the loss of her father that cut so deeply. It was the cold indifference from her mother, who was more concerned with her own life than with comforting her young daughter. She sought solace in unhealthy places, and by the time she was 15, drugs offered a temporary escape from the reality she was forced to live in. And at the age of 17, after another heated argument with her mother, Kyla gave Charity $100 and kicked her out of the house. She was told she had a choice. She could use the money to get help or to get more drugs, but either way, she was on her own. In the moment, Charity made a choice that would change her life forever. She used half of the money for drugs, and with the remaining cash, she bought enough gas to drive herself to a halfway house in Tennessee, hoping she could find the strength to fight back against the addiction that had consumed her. For a while, Charity stayed clean and even enrolled in the University of Tennessee. But even as she built a new life, the cravings never left, and a deep depression took hold. She was caught in a constant battle between the woman she hoped to become and the woman the drugs had shaped her into. If things didn't improve within a few months, she would end it all by overdosing. It was a self-imposed deadline, and just before her self-imposed deadline elapsed, when her depression and addiction were at their peak, Charity discovered that she was pregnant. And Paris, the child she hadn't planned for, became her salvation. He gave her a new purpose, a reason to live beyond the darkness that threatened to consume her. She promised herself that Paris would never face the same emotional neglect and pain she had endured growing up. He was her redemption, the reason she fought to stay clean, to love and care for him in a way that no one had ever loved her. Charity vowed that no matter what, she would break the cycle. She fought to provide him with the love and stability her own mother had denied her. From a young age, Paris Bennett was anything but an ordinary child. With an IQ of 142, Paris was intelligent, absorbing everything around him with ease. Yet, while he seemed to excel academically, there was something unsettling about him, something that set him apart from other children his age. His ability to solve complex puzzles and read at an age far beyond his peers was impressive, but his emotional world was harder to understand. From the outset, Paris's behavior was not overtly violent, but it was marked by a lack of empathy. When other children cried or needed help, Paris rarely showed interest in comforting them. His interactions were often detached, almost as if he were observing life from a distance, rather than engaging with it. Empathy, something many children learn instinctively, seemed foreign to Paris, and those closest to him began to notice his emotional distance early on. Then, Charity became pregnant again with Ella. Paris's reaction was not one of excitement or joy. He was hesitant, uncertain of what the new arrival would mean for him. The thought of sharing his mother's attention with another child felt like a threat to the bond he had with Charity. However, when Ella was born, something changed. The moment he laid eyes on his baby sister, something within Paris seemed to change. And for the first time, the cold walls around his emotions began to crack. He was drawn to her, wanting to protect her, to care for her. The bond between Paris and Ella appeared unbreakable. Paris, once emotionally distant, quickly adopted the role of protector, always hovering near Ella, making sure she was safe, and watching over her like a devoted older brother.
This is Paris Bennett reporting live. This is Ella's ball pit reporting live at Ella's ball pit. This is the suspect of the dirty diaper. Okay, creating dirty diaper. Ella. Ella Lee Bennett. What do you have to say, Ella?
But what no one could see, what Charity couldn't yet understand, was that this bond, as tight as it seemed, had the potential to become something far more dangerous. After the rocky end of her relationship with Ella's father, Charity found herself packing up once more, leaving behind the remnants of her past life in Tennessee. She moved back to her mother's house in Texas, hoping to rebuild a new beginning for herself and her two children. But, despite her best intentions, the pressures of financial instability and the weight of her past demons proved too much to bear. In Texas, Charity found herself caught in the relentless cycle of trying to make ends meet. Charity found herself slipping back into her old habits, and this relapse sent a shockwave through the family. Paris could sense that something was wrong, that his mother wasn't the same person she had been when they first arrived in Texas. What had once been a bond of affection between him and Charity turned into a fractured relationship, with Paris growing increasingly resentful. Paris started to act out in ways that were harder to ignore. He would lash out at small things at Ella, at Charity. It was Super Bowl Sunday, February 4th, 2007, a night typically filled with excitement, laughter, and the clinking of glasses in bars and restaurants across the country. But for Charity Bennett, the night was one of routine necessity. Working the evening shift at Buffalo Wild Wings, she had no choice but to leave her children at home alone. Paris, at 13, and Ella, just 4 years old, were old enough to stay home together. But Charity didn't want to risk leaving them unsupervised for the night. So she called on a babysitter, and the babysitter arrived at the house around 7 p.m., with plenty of time before Charity's shift began. Charity was relieved to know that someone would be watching over the children, though she still couldn't shake the tension of leaving them behind. She kissed Ella and Paris goodnight before heading out the door, unaware that the evening would end in a tragedy that would shatter her world forever. Around 9:30 p.m., as the Super Bowl festivities were reaching their peak, Paris casually approached the babysitter. He told her, "Mom's going to be home any minute now. You don't need to stick around, really. I can take care of things from here." The babysitter looked at the clock. It was still a few hours before Charity was due back, but Paris had always been mature for his age. Paris assured her that everything would be fine, that he could handle Ella on his own. After a brief moment of hesitation, the babysitter agreed. Paris's manipulation had worked, and she decided to leave earlier than planned. So, at around 9:45 p.m., she walked out the door, leaving Paris and Ella alone in the house, with no one to intervene in what was about to unfold. Around 11:30 p.m., Paris walked into Ella's room, where his little sister lay peacefully asleep, and what followed was a horrific crime. First, he S.A. Ella, a violation of the trust she had in her older brother. And without warning, he picked up a kitchen knife he had taken from the counter earlier that evening. Then he hit her 17 times. The defensive wounds on Ella's hands would later show just how fiercely she tried to protect herself. The attack lasted only a few minutes, but in those minutes, everything changed. One would think he would rush to call 911 or immediately seek help, but he didn't. Instead, Paris sat down and called a friend from school, and the conversation lasted for 6 minutes. It was anything but urgent. The two chatted about trivial things, completely unrelated to the life and death situation unfolding just steps away. Finally, after finishing his call, Paris dialed 911.
Abilene 911.
Hello?
Abilene 911, go ahead.
I accidentally killed somebody.
You think you killed somebody?
No, I know I did. I woke up and I was hallucinating.
You were hallucinating?
Yes, and I got my sister with a demon and I killed her.
But that was only the beginning.
What I want you to do is take her off the bed.
No, I know for a fact that she's dead.
She had to beg him to attempt CPR.
It might still help, okay?
No, I don't think it'll help because...
Come on, Paris, work with me.
Finally, before 12:30 a.m., police arrived at the house, responding to the 911 call. But what they found was unsettling. Ella's body, motionless and cold, and Paris, the boy responsible for her death, standing in the center of the chaos in shock. But Charity Bennett was still working her shift at Buffalo Wild Wings, trying to focus on her tasks while the restaurant was filled with the noise of cheering fans. Around 11:30 p.m., police officers arrived at her workplace, and Charity was immediately pulled aside. The officers informed her that something had happened at home involving her children, Paris and Ella, and that she needed to come with them right away. When Charity arrived at her home, she was led into the living room where she saw her daughter, Ella, already being placed into a body bag. The sight of her daughter being zipped up, ready to be taken away, struck Charity like a physical blow. Unable to process the scene unfolding before her, Charity, still in shock, asked in a daze, "Where's Paris? Where's my son?" She was told that Paris had already been taken into custody, and she was then escorted to the police station to speak with him. When Charity arrived at the station, she was led into a small room where Paris sat, and something about him seemed off, unsettling in a way she couldn't immediately explain. Then the police officers told her that Paris was the suspect. Charity, devastated, asked quietly, "Why Paris? Why would you do this to Ella?" Paris remained silent for a long moment, his expression unchanged. Finally, he mumbled something inaudible, something about Ella being a demon. Paris initially claimed that hallucinations had driven him to do that. The detectives, however, were quick to notice the contradictions in his story, and Paris was referred for a psychological evaluation. The experts who examined him quickly diagnosed him with conduct disorder, a condition marked by chronic violation of the rights of others, often leading to violent behavior. But more disturbing were the psychopathic traits that were uncovered during the assessment. Experts found that Paris's responses were emotionally detached. He showed no remorse or empathy for the crime he had committed. In a later confession, Paris admitted that his story about hallucinations had been a lie, a story he invented to explain his actions in a way that seemed more excusable. The true motive for the murder, Paris finally admitted, was far simpler and more disturbing than he had originally let on. Paris confessed that his original plan had been to unalive Charity, but as he plotted the act, a more calculated thought occurred to him. Taking Ella would be far more devastating to his mother than anything he could do to her directly. Paris confessed, "It wasn't about Ella, really. It was about hurting Mom." But the days that followed Ella's death were a blur for Charity Bennett. The overwhelming grief, combined with the shock of her son Paris being charged with capital murder, left her emotionally exhausted. The trial was set to begin. Paris was charged with capital murder, but because he was only 13 years old at the time of the crime, he was tried as a juvenile. The legal battle was intense, with the defense arguing that Paris's mental health issues, including his diagnosis of conduct disorder and the psychopathic traits revealed during his psychiatric evaluations, played a significant role in his actions. However, the prosecution took a much harsher stance. They painted the picture of a boy who had planned to unalive his sister as an act of revenge against his mother. But as the trial went on, Charity found herself caught in an emotional tug-of-war. Throughout the trial, Charity sat in the middle of the aisle, a physical representation of the emotional turmoil she was experiencing. On one side, she had the love for Paris, the son she had tried so hard to raise, despite the odds. On the other side was the unimaginable pain of losing Ella, her innocent child, taken from her in the most brutal way possible. During the trial, Paris showed no emotion. He sat motionless, his face blank, as his fate was decided. After weeks of testimony, the trial finally came to an end. The judge announced Paris's sentence, 40 years in juvenile detention, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. The sentence was the maximum possible for a juvenile convicted of capital murder in Texas, and it was a decision that left Charity reeling. She knew that Paris's actions had to have consequences, that justice for Ella required that he be held accountable. The idea of her son spending the next 20 years, or possibly longer behind bars without her, was something Charity couldn't fully process. A memorial was held in honor of Ella, and family and friends were present to give a tribute she deserved. However, Paris's sentence didn't end there. When he turned 19, Paris was transferred to adult prison. Years passed, but for Charity Bennett, the pain of losing her daughter, Ella, and the knowledge that her son Paris had been the one to take her life was a weight that never truly lifted. But despite the overwhelming grief, Charity made it her mission to find some meaning in the tragedy. She poured her pain into something bigger than herself, the Ella Foundation. The foundation became a beacon of light in the darkness, helping to support other families affected by violence and mental health issues. Through the foundation, Charity tried to channel her sorrow into something that could bring about change, to ensure that Ella's death wouldn't be in vain. Although Charity had forgiven Paris, she has a new son, Phoenix, and in the end, she knew that she couldn't allow Paris back into their lives once he was released. As much as she still loved him, the reality was that Paris had not changed, and it didn't seem like he ever would. For her safety, and for Phoenix's, Charity decided to move away. She couldn't take the risk of Paris re-entering their lives, not when she was unsure of what he would do next.
Every time he says, because I've heard him say that before, that he felt alone or left out, I'm always amazed. Like, where did that feeling come from? Because for the longest time, he was my only child. Life revolved around Paris. He was very loved by everybody. I was very present as a mother. How could he have felt that way? Because I remember his childhood completely different.
You had done this specifically in the end.
Yes.
To cause your mother maximum pain. This has achieved your goal, which was to effectively mean your mother lost both her children at once. One to death, one to incarceration. When you saw her completely grief-stricken and in utter torment, that is what you were hoping to achieve by your actions. So I'm just curious whether the reality of what you hoped to achieve lived up to your expectation or hope.
No. At no point did I ever feel like I had accomplished something or that I had achieved a goal. And one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to talk about how I felt at that time is because I'm completely estranged from who I was then. And now I can't comprehend how I could ever have thought that killing my sister would solve my problems.
What are your thoughts on the case? Share them in the comments below. If you found this case as unsettling as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.